black storm coming. See the lightning strike. Black people rising.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of a discussion that I started in the last previous show, part 1. And for those of you who are new to this show, my name is Keith Smokey Johnson. And the purpose of the Umoja Circle, and welcome to it if you're here for the first time, is to correct errors where errors are found and to introduce facts where we find that so many people are working on fiction when it comes to who we are as people of African descent. I like to bring up unique historical facts, not only deal with what was going on in the past, but to show you that, you know, the present is embedded in the past, the soil of the past. So what we're talking about, what's going on, I'm going to be talking about an individual that many of you might not have heard of, but he represented, in a sense, people that's brothers and sisters that popped up during the early part of the 1900s, you know, with Trotter and Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. He was of that ilk, but and people who popped up in the 1960s. We always had our black freedom fighters. We've always had our black thinkers. We always had our black people who wants to do something to liberate their people, and I'm sure we have those people going into the 21st century that are young and want to give back, but they got to understand that learn the lesson from the past. A lot of times I hear young black men and young black women frustrated today. How come we didn't do this? Or how come? Well, we have done this, and unless you know the history and what forces destroyed those events or put up struggles against those events, we've always had, I have books here, we've always dealt with education, okay? This is a book about black education, all right? This is a book about the convention. We always were in politics way into the 1800s. This is nothing new for us. You think what we have dealt with today or 2024 election is anything different than these brothers and sisters dealt with in the 1800s when they had slavery, or in the 1870s when we had Jim Crow segregation? We always fought it. We always came back. But we are dealing with a system that will not leave us alone. You're wondering why we don't have this or have that? We've had it. But this system, just like they're trying to pull books out of libraries, they want to destroy the civil rights bills and acts today, those who are in power right now in Washington, D.C. You think they're the first ones who did it to us? It's always been like that. Why do you think black people are the way we are? Why do you think sometimes we are frustrated? Why do you think brothers and sisters today are saying after the 2024 election, well, we're just going to take a break because we tried to warn you. We've been doing this for 400 years. We saw what was coming, and now you upset about what you're seeing in 2025 with Project 2025? Well, our ancestors lived in a Project 2025 world for hundreds of years. Who else would know better than us to recognize white supremacist behavior? Okay? But the majority of the dominant group don't want to listen to us. You know, doesn't bother us. We still going to speak our truth. We're going to do for us, okay? But I want you to understand, and this man that I'm going to be talking about, this man right here, was just as determined as any brother and sister today to free his people, and his name was Moses Dixon. The other, I call him the other black Moses. The first one, of course, is our honorable sister Harriet Tubman. But this is Moses Dixon, and this man's life. I did a video in the first show. If you want to listen to the opening of the first show, there's a little video showing that he was going to go to war with the South by the 1850s. He started an organization in the 40s as a 21-year-old with his wife and 11 other men, and they formed this secret organization of resistance fighters, okay? No different than the French resistance fighters who were fighting the Nazis who occupied their land. This man was about to go, as he would say in his elder age, do business. We were going to go to war. Let's go on to the next image real quick. Okay, this is the book I first heard about him, and you could read a little bit about it. A lot of the books and people who come across this information about Moses Dixon talk about this period of time. Okay, I want to go deeper about him. Yes, he started an organization, and he was going to go fight the South, with or without the permission of Washington. Okay, I mean, talk about D.C. and anybody who was in power at that time in Washington D.C. We were going to liberate ourselves. If y'all ain't going to do it, we were going to do it. That was the attitude of him and all the people that was connected to this movement. Let's go on to the next one. But you can find him in this book too. This is a good book. As I left off in the last show, part one, as Moses Dixon noted in an interview published in Minneapolis Journal decades later, the Knights of Liberty, which is the organization he established in April of 1846, with 11 other guys, and they formed this group. The Knights of Liberty were determined to organize the slaves throughout the South, drill them, and in 10 years from that time, strike for freedom. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I know this sounds crazy to some of you, but you got to understand what was going on at the time, all right? In the 1850s or in the 1840s, when he started his organization, or you just had the Mexican-American War, all right? You got all this land, and in the news of that time, in the discussion, in the debates, was how to expand slavery, whether the new territory is going to be a slave state, where they had the Missouri Compromise 4 years before he was born. He was born in 1824. The Missouri Compromise was in 1820, and it wanted to make that state, or Maine, a slave state. Okay, you growing up in that environment, and you listen to these white people deciding how to expand the destruction or the abuse of your own people, and then he became a barber, and he went up and down the Mississippi. A lot of this I talked about in the first show, but I want to give those of you who are maybe coming in on at this point, and he saw actual people being chained and being taken up and down Mississippi River and the Cumberland River and the Ohio River, going to south, as you would do cattle that you see on these railroad trains going from back and forth to be sold in auctions and all over the place. That was his people. And it got to understand the world that he was living in and why he formed this group, this resistance fighter. The French did it against the Germans. Why couldn't he do it against the United States of America? See, you got this impression, America, that this country was the land of the free, but it was hell for black people. And the mindset of black people, we're not going to take it. We weren't just docile. We heard about the Missouri Compromise. Okay, that means that no more cotton will be grown north of 36 degrees, 30 minutes position on the map. Okay, and the only reason that's the southern tip of Missouri, and the only reason that is because cotton doesn't grow any further up than that in that climate. Okay. Then you had the 1850s. You had another compromise laws and the Fugitive Slave Act, and all this was going on during this period of time that the Knights of Liberty were training for war. But if these folks are going to be doing all this, and they talk to us like we don't exist, we ain't seeing what's going on around us. Black people were alive then, seeing this. We supposed to just sit back and be accepting it? He said, if you go out and do that to us, we're going to take you out, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. We're going to do that. And that's what they were planning. Let's go on. Let's go on to the next one. Okay. many of the Knights of Liberty, let's say, managed to stop and managed stops along the Underground Railroad, okay? But they did something different than most people, all right? Not only did they man stops during this period of time when they were training, military training, but they also helped with the getting enslaved people out of these places in South Carolina and North Carolina and freeing those people he saw being shipped all over the place. He was doing that. But what they were also doing, they were recruiting people for that organization. They were recruiting black men who wanted to fight with them, but secretly. Okay, we'll establish you in this town. We'll establish you in this part of the United States. But instead of taking them to Canada, we want you to join us. Okay, we'll get you a job. We'll put you in our black communities. There were black communities all over the Midwest, what we call the Midwest now. At that time, it was the West. In St. Louis, places like St. Louis, Missouri, there were black populations. Cincinnati, Ohio, there were black populations in those places. And they ran the Underground Railroad, but they also recruited people. Let's go on to the next one. The ultimate plan was to recruit, like I said, train their militia before sparking a rebellion out of Atlanta in the summer of 1857, 10 years from when the first meeting came back in 1846. After 10 years, this is recorded. These men had enrolled 40, yes, the number's right, 47,240 reliable, fearless Knights of Liberty, who had been drilled in military maneuvers and who were courageous, patient, temperate, and possessed sound common sense. They weren't stupid. They took an oath. Okay, they had secret hand gestures. These folks were serious about going to war. How many of you heard about this? Blank, right? Nothing. This was going on. This is in the 1850s. You had the Dred Scott decision in 1857. You had like I said, the Missouri, the Compromise in 1850s. You had Kansas, the bloody Kansas going on. He was watching all this. But it had an effect on him. He said, well, what's going on around us? Well, maybe we might not have to do this in the way we plan. We might have to reset this organization to help the North, maybe. Let's go on to the next one. The plan to have a concentration, this is the original plan. They planned to have a concentration of forces in Atlanta where they would expect a force of 200,000 men march on the anti-American traitors of the South. They were going to, Atlanta has always been Chocolate City, so they were going to concentrate their forces. The 47,000, let me get this straight, the 47,000 were Knights of Liberty. Okay, that was the organization. Their job was to branch out throughout the South in every nook and cranny and recruit people in the towns, in those areas that they were going to attack. So this was planned out, all right? So they had, so this is how many people were members of the Knights, and there were other organizations also. In Detroit, they were called the African Mysteries. They had a gesture, hand gestures, where one person who was a part of the African Mysteries in Detroit, they would touch their finger to the knuckles, and the other one would do the same in some subtle way to know that they are together. We have always been like that, okay? We had our codes even in our gospels, right? In our songs that we sung. So we were always active as black people. Let's go on. Okay, he got funding from people, okay, including General Cassius Clay. Now, the name might sound familiar. Cassius Clay, the boxer, Muhammad Ali, his name was Cassius Clay. His father named him Cassius Clay after this white man of Kentucky. Read the story of General Cassius Clay. He was one of those anti-slavery in the South, Bowie knife fighting politician that would take on anybody who had Southern sympathies. He did not take that. He was fighting for the cause, kind of a John Brown type of individual. That's why Muhammad Ali's father named him Cassius Clay after this one. Another side trip. Let's go on to the next one. This is a letter to William Lloyd Garrison. People might be familiar with it. So this brother knew him. Moses Dixon understood these people. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, a day was set, but when the time came, like I said before, it was obvious to the leaders of the Knights of Liberty, Moses Dixon, that the relationship between the North and the South was becoming so strained, he decided to postpone the planned uprising. He wasn't going to rush into it like he saw Nate Turner do, or Denmark Vesey. He said, well, these white folks are going to go to war anyway. So let's use our 47,000 and our other networks to help the North. We will fight the South that way, okay? Not instead of just going, and many of them later on joined Union ranks, but before we were allowed to even join the Union ranks, we were part of a spy network that was beneficial to the Northern fight against the South. So he adapted that. Yes, he got some pushback from some of his folks who said no, but he understood that if he had kicked it off when they had planned, the North and the South would have been against black folks, okay? And it would have justified the Southern fear of black rebellion. And he saw that coming. That's what I loved about it. He was alert. He was able to adapt and adjust after even 10 years of training. But these were smart individuals. Let's go on to the next. Okay, by his own admission account, he reportedly knew John Brown. And in March of 1859, bit before John Brown went on his raid, he tried to warn him. Because John Brown was just like Cassius Clay and many of the other folks that, these are white men who wanted to free slaves and do what they were going to do. But Moses Dixon was smart enough to realize, hey, let's see what unfolds. John Brown went ahead with his plan and got hung. That was what would have happened to Moses Dixon and his men. He realized if he had went ahead with the plan. So we'll just adapt and become a spy network. Let's go on to the next one. Many members of the Knights of Liberty joined the Union fight and helped freedom seekers escape from the Confederacy way before 1863, like I said, when black soldiers were allowed to fight in the Civil War. They were working with the Union cause. Black men and women, I'm sure. Let's go on. Okay, they worked with the Union Army, BMI. BMI was the Bureau of Military Intelligence. Okay, the Friends of Liberty members spied, guided troops, and sabotaged Confederate infrastructure. They went to war. They just did it smart. They went with the side that they said had the best chance of freeing black folks, which was correct. All right, let's go on to the next one. Now, this is what happened. Of course, he was proven right. You know, the North did win, but they were still there was still an opportunity because you had those radical Republicans going on, and you had black men becoming. This is the second part of his life. Black men becoming congressmen and senators. All right. And he disbanded the Friends of Liberty, but he created another organization. All right, that's going on into that he became part of he fought his war in politics and in other areas of American history. Now we're in the period of time where we got called Reconstruction, and he adapted to that worldview that was going on and helped organizing black people he understood the world that he was going on, and he did his best in the political arena to represent blacks in this new world order. So in 1872, he reshaped the Friends of Liberty into the International Order of 12 Knights. The 12 Knights represent the original group, and of course, what happens is black women, daughters of Tabor. You know, they had temples, tabernacles similar to Masonic Lodge. This brother created another group, but these groups were social groups, but they had the same kind of network going on that helped in the age of Reconstruction. So he adapted again. Let's go on to the next one. Moses Dixon was a strong advocate of education of his people. Check this out. That's why in 1866, he was one of the individuals, along with black Civil War veterans of the 62nd and 65th United States Colored Troops, who established the HBCU Lincoln University in Missouri. The Lincoln University that exists today was established by this black man, along with black veterans of these two Union regiments that were from Missouri. They came out, they were established in St. Louis, Missouri. And after the war, the HBCU Lincoln University is the only historically black university that was established by black veterans, all right? The 62nd and the 65th, and Moses Dixon and others in his organization, okay? Founder of the Lincoln University. Let's go on to the next. Okay, like I said, therefore Lincoln University is the only HBCU in America to proudly be established by black Civil War veterans and black men like Moses Dixon. Let's go on to the next one. Besides being a strong advocate of black American education, let's go on. He went on. Moses Dixon then jumped into politics during the Reconstruction period. Let's go to the next one. He recognized that the Old Knights of Liberty organization, he reorganized, I should say, the Old Knights of Liberty organization, like I said, and created a social organization called the Orders of Knights and the Daughters of Tabor, and then used this already vast network of black men and women to pass along political information and encouraging black voters. He adapted to it. Instead of using the weapons of war, he used the weapons of the voting booths to get back progress. This is the bad man. How come we don't hear about this brother? Let's go on to the next one. This is a symbol of the flag that they would wear, the Knights of Tabor. Everything I'm telling you is documented. Let's go on to the next one. This brother did this. He was also a delegate at every Republican state convention in Missouri between 1864 and 1878. I have a book here, this book about the Black Convention. He would have been in one of them. We did participate in American history. We served. I mean, when I was taught, this period of time was called, was derived by the white-facing history that I was given. There was something wrong with the people who worked in. Why? Because they're crazy enough to let black people do what they did, and out of that era, we got the public school systems of the South. Those black congressmen and senators that you read about in Black History Month, the Bruces and those folks, they're the ones who make sure, because of their own people that they wanted educated, that there was a black educational system in the South. Prior to that, there was high literacy in the South, barely getting schooling. Black men and women gave the South that black schooling. Okay, he also served on the Colored Man's Executive Committee, another organization that he was part of, and attended the national conventions between 1869 and 1870, representing Missouri. This brother, like I said, his second half of his life, he was busy. He was still fighting. It might not have been the battle that he had planned in 1846 with his 11 other friends to go to war out starting in Atlanta, Georgia, but he was still fighting the good fight even after the war. He never stopped. All these organizations. Let's go on to the next. Dixon also founded the Missouri Equal Rights League in 1865. Just after the war, this group of black men stated that they will not support the re-enfranchisement of former Confederate slaves. This is black men saying, hey, we ain't gonna give you our vote. States, until there was a universal right to the ballot box for all black people, not just black men, all black people. Best thing they got was the 15th Amendment for men, but he pushed this type of ideas. This black man and his organization of black men and black women, we were active in American history. Let's go on. Moses Dixon was also appointed as Consul General at Port Victoria in the Seychelles in 1873 by the President Grant, the Grant administration. So he was working with the Grant administration as a general counsel, which is like an ambassador in the Seychelles off the coast of Africa. In addition to his work in the political sphere, Dixon also became an ordained minister in the AME Church in 1866. Why don't you know about this brother? Why don't you know about him and teach our young brothers about black men who stood up? He did not bend his back to anybody. During the worst period of time for black people in the 1840s and 1850s, I mean, we had a civil war where hundreds of thousands of people died on these battlefields, and during that's how bad it was going on in America at that time. And you think we're going through stuff now? And look what he accomplished. Let's go on to the next. In addition, of course, to his many other hats, Moses Dixon was also active with the Prince Hall Masons. Dixon served as the Grand Master of the Prince Hall Masons for the state of Missouri. He was the Grand Master of the Prince Hall Masons, okay, which held jurisdiction over multiple other states, and is still growing in its still growing region in that period of time. Grand Master, that's who Moses Dixon is. Let's go on to the next. Come near to the end, okay? His wife was by his side all this time. She died in 1891, all right? By the 1900s, he died in 1901. He lived alone with a servant in a different house than his daughter, and he had one daughter in that marriage with Mary and her family. And he did get married real quickly, didn't work out, and he died of typhoid fever on November 28, 1901. Okay, his funeral was held at St. Paul's AME Church in St. Louis and was attended by thousands of people. His obituary ran across many states in this country. Mother Dixon is now buried at what is known, he's known as Father Dixon Cemetery. I don't know, there's typos in that one. In Crestwood area in St. Louis, that's where he's buried, okay? Father Dixon, they call it Father Dixon Cemetery. So you see why I wanted to introduce you to this man and why it's important to understand what history is all about, okay? But I have to go. Till next time, peace, hotep, bye-bye.